The lock clicked shut with a finality that echoed louder than the howling wind outside. She didn't scream. Screaming wasted breath, and in this cold, breath was something you counted. Tracy May Stiller stood still for a second, fingers trembling in the dark. She heard footsteps crunching away in the snow. Heavy boots. Men laughing low. A curse thrown over her shoulder. Then silence, vast and cruel and complete. The darkness was not pure. It leaked in slats through warped wood, thin silver light from a rising moon threading through the cracks in the walls. But it was enough. Enough to see the outline of the dirt floor, the piles of old hay gone moldy, the corner where a rusted rake lay forgotten. Enough to know she was alone now, and left to die. Tracy leaned against the wooden wall and slid down until her knees met the frozen earth. Her breath puffed visibly in the cold, short and ragged. The winter storm had come early, and her cousins, if you could call them that, had planned for it all too well. She wrapped her arms tight around herself, trying to retain what little warmth she had. They'd taken her coat, said it was needed for one of the horses, said she wouldn't need it long. She closed her eyes just for a second, letting the ache of exhaustion wash over her. Grief, too. It still clung to her skin like smoke from an old fire. That never left. Not since Eli. Not since he bled out on their porch, whispering her name, trying to apologize for not coming back sooner. Grief made you quiet, made you smaller inside. It was like someone folded you in half, then in half again, and tucked you in a drawer. She'd been folded so many times she hardly recognized herself anymore. Tracy blinked, shook her head. The chill was sinking in fast now, sliding beneath her dress like fingers of ice. She stood, knees wobbling, and began moving. Small circles at first, arms wrapping her ribs, then stamping her feet to force blood downward. She couldn't panic. Panic was fire, hot, fast-burning, gone in seconds. She needed coal. Cold endurance. Burn slow or freeze. But God, it was hard. Every corner of the shed was bare. She searched anyway, found an old burlap sack and wrapped it around her shoulders. There was a patch of hay, damp but real, and she used it to cushion the wall before slumping down again. Time passed like syrup in winter, thick, slow, and hard to swallow. She kept herself awake, counting heartbeats. 100, 200, eyes open. Don't drift. Somewhere in the dark, a rat skittered past her boot. She didn't flinch. On the second night, at least, she thought it was night. She dreamed of Eli again. He stood in the snow with no coat, wind in his brown hair, staring at her with that half-smile he used to give when she caught him in a lie. She reached for him, but her hands passed through smoke. When she woke, her lips were cracked. Her legs were numb from mid-thigh down. She tried to rise and collapsed with a grunt. Something in her ankle had twisted the night before, but she'd been too cold to feel it. Now it throbbed. "Damn you, Jessie," she muttered, voice hoarse. "Damn all of you." They weren't even her blood. Jessie was Eli's cousin, just close enough in name to claim kinship. After Eli died, she thought maybe they'd help her hold the land. Instead, they brought papers, made her sign things she didn't understand, sold the land, locked her in a shed. They called it mercy. On the third night, it began to snow harder. She heard it first, the whisper against the walls, soft as feathers. Then it crept through the cracks, dusting her shoulders. It was too dark to see much, but she could feel it settle on her hair, her lashes. Tracy laughed, short and bitter. "First snow of the year," she whispered. "Happy damn winter." Then the tears came. She hated that. Hated crying. It didn't help. It only hurt. But something cracked wide open in her chest, and she wept, silent and shaking and cold enough to feel the tears freeze halfway down her cheeks. She tried to think of something warm. Not a fire. That was too easy. Too obvious. She thought instead of summer dust rising in golden clouds behind the horses when Eli rode out toward the creek. Of blackberry jam stuck to her fingers. Of his calloused hand brushing the hair from her neck. The fourth night came without warning. She wasn't sure anymore what time was. The cold did strange things to the mind. Sometimes she heard music. Once she thought she smelled coffee. She kept her eyes closed as much as possible now, less to see, less to hurt. But on the fourth night, something changed. She heard footsteps. They didn't belong to Jesse or his men. Too soft. Measured. Then she heard breathing. Not close, but heavy enough to press against the wind outside. Then silence again. She held her breath. A long pause. Then Wood groaned. Not the walls. The door. Something was pressing on it from the outside. Her heart thudded hard. Hope flared up like fire, and was immediately smothered by fear. Another creak. The metal latch trembled. A voice, low and steady, not English. Then the door splintered. It didn't explode inward like in stories. It cracked down the middle with a groaning shriek. Cold air flooded in, blinding white. Tracy shielded her eyes. A silhouette stood in the doorway, tall and wrapped in heavy furs. A buffalo hide cloak hung from broad shoulders. The figure didn't move for a moment. Then he stepped inside. Tracy scrambled backward until she hit the wall, hand closing around the rusted rake. He saw her, paused. "You are not dead," he said, voice rough with an accent. She didn't answer. "I thought maybe you would be." Tracy stared, eyes wide. Who the hell are you?" He didn't reply. Instead, he crouched beside her, inspecting her with a face carved in stone. High cheekbones. Long black braid tied with red string. Eyes dark as ash. "I'm not sick," she rasped, thinking maybe he was afraid to touch her. "I'm not mad, neither." "You are dying." He reached into his cloak, pulled a folded blanket from beneath the layers. Without asking, he wrapped it around her. She flinched. "I can walk," she lied. He looked at her ankle, swollen and dark. "No," he said. And, without another word, he lifted her into his arms like she weighed nothing. The cold outside slapped her across the face. Her breath vanished. She gasped. Snow swirled like ghosts around them. Tracy buried her face into his chest, too weak to protest further. The world tilted, became motion and wind and the smell of pine and horses. She drifted. Once she woke to the crackle of fire. Once more to the sound of water boiling. The third time it was to silence and warmth. She was lying on a bed of furs near a fire pit. The cave wall curved overhead like a cradle. She blinked, eyes adjusting. A kettle hissed nearby. The man sat cross-legged by the fire, polishing a knife. She tried to sit up, failed. He turned his head. "You will not die tonight." "Thanks," she croaked. He nodded. She waited for him to speak again. He didn't. "You gonna tell me your name?" He didn't look up. "Tocho." "That's it." "You do not need more." She coughed. "You always talk this much?" A pause. Then, to her surprise, a flicker of a smile. "You should rest," he said. "Storm will last 3 more days." Tracy closed her eyes again, but not to sleep. For the first time in days, maybe weeks, she let herself hope. And somewhere, beneath the warmth and pain and hunger, something stirred. A part of her still alive, still angry, still ready to rise. Tocho shifted near the fire, laying down another log. Outside, the wind roared. But inside the cave, Tracy breathed deep. Alive. Still burning. Tracy woke to the sound of a fire cracking and a strange scent, smoke, herbs, something earthy and bitter, but warm. It grounded her in a way the cold never had. Her body ached as if she'd been pulled from the bottom of a frozen river, ribs tight, legs numb. But it was warm, gloriously, undeniably warm. She turned her head, neck stiff and muscles groaning. The man, Tocho, sat with his back to her, feeding twigs into a narrow flame between 2 flat rocks. Beyond him, the cave mouth opened like the throat of a beast. Snow gusted in faint whirlwinds just outside, but the firelight kept it at bay, kept her safe. For now. She shifted, wincing at the soreness radiating from her ankle and hip. The pain was sharp, but it was honest. It told her she was still alive. She sat up slowly, wrapping the heavy buffalo hide tighter around herself. It smelled faintly of smoke and animal fat and something older, something that reminded her of stories too ancient to belong to her. Tocho didn't speak at first, didn't even turn. He let the silence stretch testing it, like he was giving her room to decide whether she had a voice left. "You got a strange way of saving people," she said finally. He glanced back, eyes calm. "You were left to die. Didn't mean I needed rescuing." "Yes, it did." The simplicity of the answer caught her off guard. No dramatics, no explanation, just fact. A statement heavier than a sermon. She shifted again, testing her weight. Her ankle throbbed. "You always break into sheds and carry women off into the snow." He didn't smile, but something flickered behind his eyes. "No, not usually." "Then why me?" He reached into a bag and pulled out a small carved bowl, poured hot water over a handful of crushed leaves. The scent that followed was sharp and minty. "My sister died last winter," he said, quiet. "Her husband locked her in a barn before the first snow. Said she'd gone mad after losing her child." Tracy blinked. Her throat tightened. "I found her in spring," he added. Frozen, hands clawed at the door. Silence followed like a third voice in the room. She stared at the fire, unsure if she should speak. But he didn't seem to need her to. He handed her the bowl. She took it, hands barely steady. "I'm sorry," she murmured. He nodded once, and that was the end of it. The tea was bitter, but it burned a path through the cold in her bones. She sipped, felt her fingers regain sensation. Outside, the wind wailed like a widow. Inside, Tocho stirred a stew pot with steady hands. "You Navajo?" she asked after a while. "Yes." "That supposed to mean something to me?" "You asked." "I did." She sipped again. "You got family?" He didn't answer at once. "I had many once. Now fewer. The mountains take. The white men take. And sometimes we take from ourselves." Tracy nodded. She understood that kind of taking. The kind that wore your skin and smiled while doing it. The kind that took everything, even your name, and left you with hollow bones. "My name's Tracy May Stiller." Tocho nodded. "I know." She stiffened. "How?" "They said your name in town. The man who sold your land bragged about it." Tracy's stomach twisted. "Jesse." "Yes. He said the widow was too sick to survive the winter. He showed the deed. Said you were buried on your husband's land, quiet and clean." Folks nodded. Took his word. She swallowed hard. "He lied. Sold the ranch. Kept the money. Left me in a goddamn shed." Tocho looked at her, nothing in his face but patience. "I know. I want to kill him." His eyes didn't change, but he dipped his head slightly. "You may get the chance." She finished the tea and handed the bowl back. "Why are you helping me?" He stirred the stew again. "Because I remember what it's like to watch someone die behind a locked door." Tracy leaned her head against the cave wall, closing her eyes for a moment. Her breath was steady now. Pain still there, but manageable. And behind the pain, something else. Something sharp and bright, like the glint of a blade. The storm lasted 2 more days. In that time, Tocho said little. He brought her food, changed her bandage, helped her walk without asking. His presence was like stone, reliable, silent, always there. They shared only a few words each day, but they were the kind of words that mattered. Not clutter, not noise, just truth. On the 3rd morning, the wind calmed. Sunlight reached the floor of the cave, gold bleeding over gray rock. Tocho stood at the entrance, watching the ridge. Tracy joined him, leaning on a stick he'd shaped for her from pine. Snow stretched over the valley like a burial shroud. But beyond it, the road curved downward toward the town, toward Jessie, toward what used to be hers. "You planning to walk back?" she asked. "No," he said. "Ride." He whistled, and a few minutes later, a paint mare trotted up from the trees, breath fogging the cold air. Tracy stared. "She yours?" "She is now." "You steal her?" "No. I took her from men who no longer needed her." "What's the difference?" He looked at her, intent. She laughed, surprised at the sound of it. It felt rusty, like it hadn't been used in too long. "Where are we going?" she asked, sobering. "To your cousin." Tracy hesitated. "I don't know if I can face him." "You can." "And if I freeze up again?" "If I run." Tocho handed her the reins. "Then I go in alone." She gripped the leather. "You don't even know me." "I know you didn't die." That stayed with her. They rode slow at first. Her ankle still throbbed, but the pain helped, kept her sharp, reminded her this wasn't a dream. The snow packed hard under the mare's hooves. Trees passed like sentries, their branches heavy with frost. The cold bit less now. Or maybe she'd grown teeth. On the second day of riding, they stopped near a creek to water the horse. Tracy knelt awkwardly on one knee, splashing water on her face. Tocho watched the tree line. "You trust me?" she asked suddenly. He didn't move. "Enough. That's not much. It is more than I give most." She nodded, lips tight. "Do you trust yourself?" he asked, turning to her. She blinked. "No, not yet." "Then start there." That night, they camped beneath a cliff, flames flickering low. Tocho sat beside her, sharpening a knife. Tracy stared at the stars. "They ever come for you?" she asked. "The men who left your sister?" "No." "You ever go looking for them?" "Yes. And I let them live." She turned. "Why?" He stared into the fire. "Because I wanted to remember what restraint tasted like." She lay back, eyes wide. The stars were too many to count, but she tried anyway. It kept her from thinking too long about what they would find when they reached the ranch. Whether Jesse would run or fight. Whether she'd hesitate. She couldn't afford hesitation. In the morning, they were close enough to see smoke from the ranch chimney curling into the sky. Tracy's stomach turned. Her fingers curled around the saddle horn. Tocho looked at her. "You don't have to go in yet. We can watch. Wait. Learn." Tracy nodded. "One day. Then I want my life back." "You still want to kill him?" She thought about it. "Then, no. I want him to look at me and know I survived." Tocho offered a rare smile. That night, Tracy cleaned her old revolver, finger steady. She didn't know if it would shoot straight, but that wasn't the point. Tocho brought back a rabbit. They cooked in silence. But there was peace in it now. Not quiet like before, dead and empty, but the kind that came before something big. A pause before the reckoning. As they settled by the fire, Tracy leaned back and looked at him. "Why didn't you just walk away?" Tocho took a long moment before answering. "Because when I saw that shed, I didn't see you. I saw my sister." Tracy's voice caught. "And now I see you." She nodded slowly. No more words left in her. Just fire. And breath. And a sky full of stars waiting for the storm to end. The sun hadn't yet cleared the trees when they spotted the tracks. Tocho crouched low in the snow, fingers brushing the deep indentations like he was reading a book. The prints were fresh, 4 horses, maybe 5, riding hard. Tracy stood beside him, rifle slung awkwardly over one shoulder, heart thudding like a war drum in her chest. "They're close," he said. "Jesse's men?" she asked, though she already knew. He nodded once. "Too heavy for trappers. Too careless for soldiers." Tracy swallowed the tightness in her throat. "You think they're hunting us?" "They're not smart enough to do it well," Tocho replied, rising slowly, "but yes." Her fingers twitched against the rifle's worn stock. Just holding the thing felt foreign. Once upon a time, she'd used it to chase off coyotes. Now she wondered if she'd pull the trigger at all. They moved quickly, doubling back through the timber, Tocho choosing paths under old pine cover to mask their scent. Tracy followed his lead, ankle sore but steady, breath sharp in the cold. The snow muffled everything, but she could still hear them in the distance, men shouting, hooves pounding. Jesse wasn't leaving anything to chance. They didn't speak much that morning. Every minute felt borrowed, like the mountains had decided to let them live a little longer just to see what they'd do with it. By midday, they found shelter in a rocky outcrop hidden by draping cedar. Tocho hunkered down to listen while Tracy kept her eyes on the horizon. She spotted a movement in the far trees, a glint of a hat, the flicker of a coat, and ducked low. Tocho didn't have to look. He already knew. "They're flanking," he said, "trying to box us in." Tracy's pulse quickened. "How many?" "Too many for you to shoot. Not enough to stop us." "I wasn't planning to shoot them all." He raised an eyebrow. "Just Jesse." She hadn't meant to say it, but it was true. Every bone in her body hummed with the need to face him, to show him she hadn't frozen, that she wasn't buried in the snow like a stray dog no one wanted. Tocho didn't ask questions. He just passed her a small pouch of jerky and took a swig from the canteen. "We'll move when the light softens," he said. "Their eyes will slow before their guns do." They waited. Time passed like it always did in the wild, indifferent, patient. Tracy counted each breath, grounding herself. One for Eli. One for the land. One for every damn lie Jesse told. When they moved again, they slid through the forest like shadows. Tocho led, his movements silent, efficient. Tracy followed, less graceful but determined. Every snapped twig made her wince. Every gust of wind made her flinch. The forest thinned near a frozen creek bed. They stopped at the edge, scanning the clearing. Tocho pointed. "There. Hoof prints." They crossed. Tracy studied the snow. Deep grooves, churned ice, a boot scuff near a fallen branch. "They're moving faster," she said. "Or sloppier." They crossed carefully, Tocho carrying a fallen log to disguise their trail. Tracy's ankle protested, but she pushed through. Pain meant she was still fighting, still in it. They pressed on, higher into the hills. By twilight, the wind had picked up again, bringing with it the metallic scent of coming snow. That night they lit no fire, just a blanket of stars overhead and the sound of wind threading through bare branches. Tracy sat beside Tocho, back against a cold rock. Her body ached. Her stomach growled. But she couldn't sleep. "Jesse's not just greedy," she said into the dark. "He's scared. Always has been." Tocho didn't move. Scared men do cruel things. "I remember when Eli brought me home for the first time. Jesse barely said a word, just looked at me like I was a storm about to ruin his porch." Tocho grunted. "You were." She smiled faintly. "Eli said Jesse had a temper, that he couldn't be trusted. But family's family, right?" "Family is choice," Tocho replied. "Not blood." They sat in silence again. Tracy closed her eyes. She thought of a ranch, the fields gone to rot, the porch where she'd kissed Eli before his last ride. She thought of the shed, the cold, the sound of the lock clicking shut. "I'm not the same woman I was," she whispered. "No," Tocho agreed. "You're not." The next morning, they were moving before dawn. Tocho scouted ahead while Tracy circled back along a ridge. The air was razor sharp. Her breath came in short bursts as she climbed. From the top, she saw them. 5 riders below, camped just inside the tree-line. Horses tethered. Guns resting. Jesse sat by the fire, laughing. She froze. He looked the same. Thick jaw, narrow eyes, always squinting like the world owed him clarity. But there was a tiredness in him now, a slump in the shoulders, like even betrayal had worn him out. Tracy's hands curled into fists. She slid back down the ridge, nearly tumbling before catching herself. Tocho met her halfway. "They're resting," she said. "He's with them." "Good. We move faster. They'll follow. That's what we want." Tracy stared at him. "You want them to chase us?" "I want them alone, one by one." The plan was simple. They'd lead them into the narrow ravine just south of the old miner's trail. No easy exit, no cover, just cold rock and hard choices. By midday, the trap was set. Tocho doubled back, his tracks obvious. Tracy took position above the ravine, rifle loaded, heart pounding. She watched as the first rider came in fast, not checking his surroundings. He barely had time to draw before Tocho dropped from the rocks, blade flashing once. The man went down hard, a cry muffled by snow. The second and third riders came soon after. Tocho vanished into the trees. One man fired wildly. Tracy held her breath, finger on the trigger. She didn't shoot. Not yet. They scattered. Then Jesse rode in. Alone. Tracy's world narrowed. He looked around, wary now. Saw the fallen man. Saw the blood. He dismounted slowly, rifle raised. Tracy stood up from the rocks. "Hi, Jesse." He spun, eyes wild. "You." She stepped down, slowly. Gun in hand, finger steady. "You left me to die." "I thought," he started. "No," she cut him off. "You didn't think at all." He raised the rifle. She didn't flinch. "You won't shoot me," he said. "You never had it in you." You don't know what I have in me anymore. He hesitated, sweat on his brow, steam in his breath. I didn't want this, he said. I needed the money. The land, it was just rotting, Tracy. You were rotting. She stepped closer. I survived. Tocho, Jesse spat. That's the one helping you, isn't it? An outsider. You always needed saving. Tracy aimed the rifle at his chest. No, not anymore. His grip tightened. A shot rang out, not hers. Jesse's rifle flew from his hands, hit by a bullet that shattered the stock. Tocho stepped from the trees, gun smoking. Jesse dropped to his knees, hands raised. Please. I didn't mean. You locked me in a shed, Tracy said. You left me for dead. And now you beg. He looked up at her. What are you going to do? Shoot me? She lowered the rifle. No, she said. I want you to remember this moment. Every day you wake up. Every time you see snow. I want you to think of me standing here, alive. And know you lost. He stared at her, chest heaving. Walk, Tocho said. Jesse stumbled to his feet, shaking. He didn't look back. Tracy didn't move until he vanished into the trees. She exhaled slowly. Her hands were trembling now. Tocho approached. You didn't kill him. I wanted to. But you didn't. She nodded. I think that was harder, she whispered. He didn't argue. They stood in silence as snow began to fall again, soft and slow, like ash from a dying fire. Tracy looked at the sky, then at Tocho. What now? He smiled just barely. Now we go somewhere he won't follow. She nodded. As they rode away, the snow covered Jesse's tracks behind them, erasing them as if he'd never been. But Tracy knew better. Some scars didn't vanish. Some stayed, carved deep like tracks in the snow. They rode in silence as the mountains gave way to open fields. The snow had lightened, a faint flurry drifting over the landscape like ash after storm. Beneath it all, the earth was beginning to stir again. But Tracy wasn't looking for signs of spring. She was looking for justice. Tocho rode beside her, a quiet sentinel. He hadn't spoken since they left the ravine. He didn't need to. She knew what he'd say. Revenge is a road that always circles back. But this wasn't about revenge. It was about reckoning. The sun dipped low behind them as they crested the final hill. There it was, spread out like a wound across the land. Her ranch. Or what was left of it. Fences broken. Roof sagging. Smoke curling lazily from the chimney. The porch where Eli used to sit with coffee and a rifle now held two strangers laughing over a bottle. Not strangers. Jesse's men. Hired guns, likely paid with stolen land. Tracy narrowed her eyes, the cold wind biting against her cheeks. Every nerve in her body tingled with the sharpness of returning memory. She could still hear Eli's boots on those steps. Still feel his fingers brush hers under the table. She turned to Tocho. We end this tonight. He nodded. No hesitation. They dismounted by the edge of the creek that once marked her western boundary. Tocho tied the horses low and out of sight. Tracy checked her revolver. 5 rounds. She exhaled, breath fogging, and tightened her grip. They moved like shadows, slipping between the tall grass and the broken edges of the corral. A dog barked once in the distance, then fell silent. The ranch had changed, but the soil remembered. Every step forward felt like a reclamation. Tocho motioned to the left. He'd circle around. Tracy nodded, heart hammering. She approached the barn first. It stood quiet and sagging, the same place where Eli had once built a cradle from scraps of cedar. The memory hit her like a slap. She steadied herself against the doorframe. Voices rose from the main house. Laughter. Then glass shattering. She moved. The porch groaned under her boots, but no one noticed. She stepped past an old crate, crouched low. Through the cracked window, she saw them. 3 men around the table, cards laid out, a rifle propped in the corner. Jesse wasn't among them. She slipped around the side, toward the back door, just as a 4th man stumbled out to relieve himself near the trough. He spotted her too late. She struck first. The butt of her revolver cracked against his temple, and he went down without a sound. She didn't hesitate. She stepped through the back door. The men inside turned at once, too slow. The first drew his gun, but Tracy was faster. One shot, clean, straight through his shoulder. He screamed, dropped the weapon. The second scrambled to grab the rifle in the corner, but Tocho was already through the front, silent as a ghost, knife flashing. The third bolted toward the stairs. Tracy chased him. Up the narrow steps, past the bedroom where she and Eli had once lain in the early mornings, whispering about names for children that never came. Her heart clenched, but her steps didn't falter. At the top, she found him hiding behind the open door. He lunged. She twisted, grabbed the collar of his coat, slammed him against the wall. "Where's Jesse?" He spat blood. "Gone. Took the gold, rode east." She pressed the barrel to his temple. "Try again." "North," he choked. "Old logging trail. He's waiting for word. Thought you'd be dead." Tracy stepped back. "You're lucky I don't finish what Jesse started." He whimpered, slid to the floor. She turned, boots thudding hard as she descended. Tocho stood by the table, one man unconscious, the other groaning. "He's running," she said. Tocho didn't flinch. "Then we follow." They rode through the dark, cutting through frozen fields and narrow deer trails. Tracy leaned forward, urging the mare faster. Every hoofbeat was a drumbeat in her chest. The forest swallowed them whole, moonlight filtering through bare branches. By the time they reached the old logging camp, the fire was already out. The snow bore fresh tracks, one horse pacing. Then nothing. Tracy dismounted and followed the trail on foot. Tocho moved parallel, eyes scanning the woods. A snap of a branch. Tracy spun, gun raised. "Easy," Jesse's voice called from the dark. "You're a long way from your grave." She stepped forward. "You're a long way from your salvation." He emerged slowly, rifle raised. "Put it down, Tracy. We both know you're not going to shoot me." "I didn't come here to hesitate." His eyes narrowed. "You always were the soft one. Eli said it himself. All fire, no fuse." Tracy's jaw clenched. "You think he didn't see through you? He knew you were poison. He just thought he could protect me from it." "You don't know what it's like," Jesse snapped. "To grow up with nothing, scratching dirt while Eli gets the land, the woman, the respect. I deserve that life. You deserved a bullet." Jesse raised his rifle. Tocho fired. The shot echoed through the trees, sharp and final. Jesse staggered, dropped the rifle, and fell to his knees. Blood bloomed across his chest. He looked up at Tracy, stunned. "You let him shoot me?" She stepped closer. "No, Jesse. I let you live. And you used that chance to crawl further into hell." He slumped forward, breath fading. The forest went still. Tracy holstered her revolver and turned away. They'd buried him by the creek, shallow and silent. Tocho didn't say anything. Neither did she. There was nothing left to say. When they returned to the ranch, the wind had picked up again, whistling through the broken eaves. Tracy stood on the porch, looking out over the fields. Snow swirled lazily, catching in the broken fence posts and tall grass. "It's still mine," she said softly. Tocho nodded beside her. "What will you do with it?" She looked out for a long time. "Then, rebuild. Not the house, not the fences. Something else. Something better." He glanced at her. "You won't be alone." "I know." The sun rose slowly over the plains, casting long shadows behind them. A new day. One built not on vengeance or grief, but on choice. Tracy turned to him. "You said family is a choice," she said. He met her eyes. "It is." She smiled. "Then stay." He didn't answer right away, but he didn't walk away either. Later, Tracy would ride to the neighboring towns. She'd find women like her, forgotten, cast off, locked away, and she'd help them break their own chains. But for now, she stood with a man who had once broken her door and given her back her name. If this story moved you, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share your thoughts in the comments. The first thing Clara Whitmore felt was heat, blistering, merciless, seeping into her skin like it meant to brand her soul. It came before the pain, before the thirst, before memory. She didn't know where she was, only that her lips were cracked, her head throbbed, and her back was pressed to something hot and unyielding. The canyon. Her eyes opened slowly to a sky so blue it hurt to look at. Clouds moved like ghosts across it, unconcerned. Around her, red sandstone cliffs stretched into a jagged crown, boxing her in. The air tasted of dust and blood. She tried to sit up, failed. The pain came flooding in then, sharp in her shoulder, dull in her ribs, screaming in her ankle. Her arms were bound at the wrists. Rough rope. Too tight. Her dress was torn along one side, soaked dark with sweat and something thicker. She blinked and turned her head. Flies buzzed near the wound on her thigh. It wasn't a dream. She remembered now. Jed's voice, low, steady, false as a gambler's smile. "It's better this way, darlin'." His hand brushing her cheek before the push. The fall. The deafening silence after the gunshot. Jed Rourke had left her for dead in this canyon. Clara swallowed, but her throat was too dry. Even her tears refused to come. The buzzards were circling above. Not close, not yet, but they knew. They always knew. For a while, she lay there, letting the sun beat down on her like a punishment. Her mind wandered, images floating up like smoke. Her first husband's warm eyes, the smell of coffee in the morning, the softness of a wool shawl. All gone. Taken by fever 2 winters ago. Now she had this, a body broken in the desert and a soul aching in its silence. But Clara Whitmore had never been the kind to give up quietly. She rolled onto her side with a groan, grit digging into her cheek. The canyon floor baked like a skillet beneath her. She worked her wrists against the rope. No use. Her hands were going numb. Her breath came short and shallow. Somewhere, a coyote yipped in the distance. "You bastard," she whispered, voice hoarse. "You sorry, lying bastard." Jed had sweet-talked her into marriage 6 months ago. All charm and golden promises. She should have known better. Should have listened to her gut when he never looked her in the eyes long. When his smile never quite reached the edges. But she had been lonely, tired of the stares from townsfolk and the quiet judgment in their greetings. He offered her escape. Turns out, he was the trap. She gritted her teeth and kicked her good leg forward, inching herself toward the shadow of a boulder. The sun moved slow, but it burned fast. Each inch felt like a mile. The canyon mocked her with its stillness. No help, no hope, only her. And then there, a shard of black stone, sharp as broken glass, half buried in the dust. Obsidian. She reached for it, her fingers clawing through sand, stretching. Just barely. She hooked it with 2 fingers and dragged it toward her chest. It was hot to the touch. She winced, but didn't let go. Twisting awkwardly, she began to saw at the rope binding her wrists. Each scrape sent pain lancing through her arm, but she didn't stop. Sweat trickled into her eyes. Her breath hitched. A sound startled her. A rock shifting. She froze. Nothing. She cut faster. The rope frayed. Snapped. Her arms fell free. She nearly cried then, but the tears still wouldn't come. She sat up slowly, cradling her injured leg. Blood had dried in streaks down her shin. She took the obsidian and cut at the bindings on her ankles, cursing through clenched teeth. A gust of wind stirred dust across the canyon floor. It whispered over the rocks like something alive. Clara stood, or tried to. Her right ankle buckled, sending her crashing back down. She bit down on a scream. She'd have to crawl. By sunset, she'd made it 20 yards. Every limb shook. Her skin was blistered. Her tongue, a strip of dry leather. But she kept going. The will inside her burned hotter than the sun above. Not just survival, vengeance. Her memory played Jed's smirk over and over like a needle skipping on a record. She was going to kill him, or haunt him until something else did. When she finally collapsed against the canyon wall, darkness was pooling at the edges of the sky. Stars peeked through. The wind had grown colder, slicing across her sun-scorched skin like a knife. She lay back, eyes half-lidded, whispering to no one. "Is that all you've got, world?" Her voice was swallowed by the canyon. She tried again, louder. "Help someone." A broken sob escaped her lips. Her voice echoed off stone, bounced back, sounding as small and lost as she felt. She coughed, sat up again, and screamed. Not a polite call for aid. Not a pretty, ladylike plea. A scream that ripped from her belly, raw, wild, furious. A scream that told the canyon, the stars, the gods themselves, that Clara Whitmore wasn't ready to die. She screamed until her throat burned, until her voice cracked, until silence swallowed her again. Then she waited. Long minutes passed. Nothing. She closed her eyes. Sleep tugged at her, dark and deep. She welcomed it. But then, footsteps. Soft. Deliberate. Crunching over sand and stone. Clara's eyes snapped open. She tried to sit up, couldn't. Panic surged. A figure appeared at the canyon's edge. Tall, lean, silhouetted by the last sliver of sunlight. The figure descended slowly, moving with a predator's grace. He wore buckskin and carried a long rifle across his back. His black hair was tied behind his head, and turquoise gleamed at his wrist. He stopped a few feet from her. Clara's breath caught. He crouched, eyes sharp, unreadable. "You cry like a warrior," he said. His voice was deep and steady, with an accent that curled the words like smoke. Clara blinked. You're real." He didn't answer. Instead, he knelt beside her, opened a leather canteen, and tilted it to her lips. The water was lukewarm, but tasted like heaven. She drank until she coughed. "Easy," he murmured. She wiped her mouth with the back of her hand. "Who are you?" He considered her a moment. "Ashkai." "Clara," she said breathlessly. "Clara Whitmore." He nodded once, then pulled a small pouch from his belt. Inside was crushed herb, which he mixed with water and dabbed onto her leg. It stung like fire. She flinched. "Sorry," he said, but his hands never wavered. "You a doctor?" "No." "What are you then?" "Man who heard scream." She studied him as he worked. His skin was bronze, his face etched with calm. Not young, not old. A scar curved beneath one eye. He wore silence like armor. He tied a strip of cloth around her leg and sat back. "Who did this to you?" Clara hesitated. "Then, my husband." He didn't react. "He left me here," she added. "Shot me. Thought I wouldn't get back up." Ashkai looked at the stars. He was wrong. Tears welled in her eyes. Finally, they came. "I don't understand. Why would he?" Ashkai stood. "Because weak men fear strong women." Clara stared after him as he walked a few steps away, scanning the ridge. She didn't know whether to laugh or sob. Her heart was a tangle of emotions: grief, rage, relief. He returned a moment later. "Can you ride?" "I don't know," she said honestly. "We try." He helped her to her feet. She leaned on him heavily. His arm was solid as a tree trunk. A horse stood nearby, silent, dark, patient. Ashkai lifted her into the saddle with surprising gentleness. She bit back a scream as her ankle twisted. He climbed up behind her, guiding the horse with quiet commands. As they rode deeper into the canyon, Clara leaned back against him, exhaustion stealing her thoughts. But one remained. She would live. She would heal. And Jed Rourke would pay for everything he had done. The canyon narrowed to a sliver of moonlight between towering red walls as the horse carried them deeper into silence. Clara leaned against Ashkai's chest, not by choice but by necessity. Her body throbbed in places she didn't know could hurt. His arms circled her waist, not intimate, not hesitant, just solid, steady, like he was used to carrying things broken by the world. She didn't speak. He didn't ask. The horse moved at a deliberate pace, careful not to jostle her more than needed. When the path finally widened, Ashkai turned them toward a split in the canyon wall, narrow and half-hidden behind a rockslide. A goat trail, if that. But the man guided his horse without a word, as if he knew every inch of this land by heart. They emerged into a hollowed cove tucked between sandstone arches. Here, the wind quieted. The stars thickened overhead, and the air smelled faintly of sage and cooling earth. A small fire pit marked the center. Bones from old meals. Scorch marks. Ashkai dismounted first, then reached up to ease her down. Clara gasped when her foot touched the ground. Pain like lightning ripped through her leg, and she collapsed against him, breath hissing through clenched teeth. He caught her. Without a word, he carried her in both arms to a bedroll set beneath a shallow rock shelf. The stone overhead was blackened from past fires. She saw a blanket folded with care, the end of a bough leaning against the wall. This wasn't a campsite. It was a home, if a man like him ever called a place that. Clara tried to speak, but the ache in her ribs stole her breath. Ashki knelt beside her, unwrapping the cloth he'd tied hours earlier. He studied the wound, no fresh bleeding, but angry and swollen. With gentle precision, he pressed fingers around the edge. She winced. "You didn't scream this time," he said quietly. "I'm too tired," she muttered. He nodded once, approving. Then he stood and moved to the fire pit. She watched as he collected twigs and dry grass from a crevice nearby, built a small pyramid, and sparked a flame with flint and steel. Soon, the fire crackled, casting long shadows across the stone walls. Ashki poured water into a pot and added a pinch of something green from a pouch. The scent drifted toward her, bitter, clean, sharp like mint and smoke. When he returned, he cradled her head and held the pot to her lips. "What is it?" she asked, voice hoarse. "For pain," he answered. "And sleep. I don't trust you yet." "You don't have to," he said. "But you'll need your strength." She drank. It tasted awful, but warmth bloomed in her chest, chasing the cold from her bones. She sank back into the blanket. Ashki adjusted it over her shoulders. "You gonna stay there all night?" she asked. "I don't sleep easy when people bleed near me." Clara smirked despite herself. "Ain't that poetic?" He didn't answer, just sat across from her, legs crossed, rifle resting beside him. The firelight danced in his eyes, casting strange patterns across his face. For a long while, neither spoke. The wind whispered through the rocks, and somewhere far above, an owl hooted once. Then she said, "I guess I owe you thanks." "You don't." "Well, I'm saying it anyway." Ashki inclined his head slightly. "What kind of man rides toward a scream in the canyon?" she asked. "One who's heard it before." She tilted her head. "You lose someone?" His eyes shifted to the fire. "My brother. 10 years ago. Taken by cavalry patrol. They said he was stealing horses. He wasn't." Clara swallowed hard. "What happened?" "They sent him back in pieces." She looked down at her hands. "I'm sorry." Ashki's jaw tightened. The wind cried for days after, loud enough to wake the dead. "Maybe he screamed too," Clara said softly. Ashki met her gaze. "Maybe he did." She sat with that a moment, letting the silence settle between them like dust. Then she pulled the blanket tighter. "Why live out here? No town, no roof, no people." "People kill each other over things that don't matter," he said. "Out here, it's just truth." Clara nodded slowly. "I think I like that." "You wouldn't," he said. "Not for long." He stood then, moved to the edge of the cove, and scanned the trail behind them. The moonlight caught on his rifle barrel. "You expecting someone?" she asked. "I saw smoke earlier. North Ridge. Not mine." Clara's blood turned cold. "Jed." "Could be. He'll come back to make sure I'm dead." Ashki looked over his shoulder. "Then we won't be here when he does." She watched him disappear into the shadows, checking the perimeter. Her fingers curled into the blanket. She had known Jed would try to finish the job. Outlaws didn't leave loose ends. But now, under this quiet stone sky, she felt something strange creep in. Hope. By morning, her leg throbbed less. The swelling had eased. Ashki gave her jerky and bread. Neither tasted good, but she ate. When she tried to stand, he didn't stop her. She leaned on him again, gritting her teeth. "You walk like a drunk mule," he said. She chuckled. "You talk like one." He led her to a rock ledge overlooking the canyon's bend. From here, the world unfolded, flatlands, distant mountains, and the faint smoke plume on the horizon. She squinted. "Too far for a campfire." Ashki said, "Unless it's a big camp." She turned to him. "You ever kill a man?" He didn't blink. "Yes." "Would you again?" "If he needed killing." Clara nodded. "Jed does." Ashki studied her. "Revenge costs more than it gives." "I'm not after revenge," she said. "I'm after justice." They looked the same in the dark. They returned to the cove, and that evening, he showed her how to hold a knife properly. She gripped it wrong at first. He corrected her without words. When she asked why, he simply said, If he finds us first, you'll need more than prayers." They practiced in the fading light. Clara's movements were slow, unsteady, but Ashki was patient. He moved like water, effortless. She hated how easy he made it look. Afterward, she slumped against the rock wall, sweaty and sore. "Teach me to shoot next." "You'll scare the birds." "I scare worse things," she muttered. That night, Ashki left a trail of false prints down the canyon path. Clara watched him from the shadows, marveling at the way he moved, as if part of the land itself. He returned after midnight and tossed her a small pouch. "Tobacco," he said. "Smoke it. The scent will cover us." She didn't smoke, never had, but she lit it anyway. "Thank you," she said again. Ashki looked toward the ridge. "He'll come soon. Then we make ready." "You really want to fight him?" "I don't want to," she said. "I need to." Ashki nodded. They sat together in silence, once more, two strangers joined by pain and purpose. As the fire dwindled, Clara reached for the obsidian shard she'd used to cut herself free. She turned it over in her hand. "This saved me," she said. Ashki looked at it. "It cuts both ways." "I'll remember that." She leaned back and closed her eyes, the smoke curling around her. For the first time in days, her body surrendered to rest, not because it had no choice, but because she felt, in the presence of this strange man, something dangerously close to safe. Morning came with birdsong and golden light. Ashki was already gone. She sat up, half panicked, until he appeared again, carrying a rabbit strung by its legs. He skinned and cooked it without ceremony. They ate quickly. Clara limped a little easier now. "Can I ask you something?" she said. He nodded. "Why did you help me?" Ashki didn't answer right away. He wiped his hands and tossed a bone into the fire. "Because the last time I heard a scream like that, I didn't move fast enough." Clara studied his face. "You still hear it? Every time I close my eyes." She reached across the space between them and touched his hand. "You got there in time this time." He looked at her, then down at their hands. "I know," he said. They didn't speak of it again. Later that day, as the shadows stretched long and the canyon wind picked up, Ashki pointed toward the bend in the trail. "Tracks," he said. "3 horses. Fresh. Heading this way." Clara's chest tightened. "Then it's begun." Ashki slung his rifle over his shoulder. "Then we don't run." She met his gaze. "No. We make them hunt something they can't catch." His lips twitched. Not quite a smile, but close. Clara stood beside him, her leg wrapped tight, knife at her hip. The wind rose, carrying the scent of dust and danger. The hunted were becoming hunters, and Clara Whitmore was ready. The wind carried the scent of horses. Ashki crouched beside the narrow trail, fingers brushing the soft dust. Clara watched him from the shadows of a sandstone outcrop. She didn't speak. She didn't have to. She could see it in the way he frowned, the tension in his jaw. Someone was close. He rose slowly, eyes scanning the cliffs above. 3 men, he said. "Same boots as before. One's got a limp." Clara nodded. "That's Hank. Jed's right hand. Mean drunk, worse sober." Ashki gaze flicked toward her. "How many total?" 4, maybe 5. "Jed always keeps 1 man behind with the horses." 4, Ashki echoed, then pointed to a dry wash cutting through the canyon floor. "We'll lead them that way. Funnel them." Clara followed him down the slope, her ankle tightly wrapped, the pain duller now. She had learned to move with care, to listen like he taught her. The land spoke if you knew how to listen. A crow's cry could be warning. A shifted stone might mean pursuit. Every noise mattered. They reached the wash and began laying false trails, boots dragged in the wrong direction, broken branches arranged deliberately. Ashki showed her how to set a trip line using cactus needles and fishing line. She practiced twice before he nodded, satisfied. "You're quick," he said. "I'm angry," she replied. That earned the ghost of a smile. By midday, they had rigged 3 traps, a deadfall with sharp stones, a spooked mule tethered near an unstable cliff edge, and a thorn snare hidden beneath a dusting of red sand. Clara watched Ashki work with a kind of reverence. He moved like a man who understood the bones of the world, placing weight where it wouldn't echo, leaving no trace unless he wanted it seen. As the sun climbed, they retreated to a ridge overlooking the trail. They waited. The silence stretched. Clara's fingers gripped the rifle Ashki had handed her. It was heavier than she expected. The wood was smooth, worn down from years of use. She'd never killed a man before. Part of her feared what it would feel like. Part of her feared she wouldn't feel anything at all. Ashki broke the silence. "You ready?" "No," she admitted. "But I'm willing." "That's enough." Below them, the first rider appeared, dust rising behind him like smoke. Then another. A third followed. All wore dark hats and sweat-soaked shirts, rifles slung, pistols loose at their hips. One man leaned heavily to the left. Hank. Even at this distance, Clara could see the sneer he wore like a badge. Ashki handed her a pair of old field glasses. She steadied them against the rock. Jed wasn't with them. She breathed out slowly. "He's not here." Ashki nodded. "That's good." "How's that good?" "We'll make them talk." The outlaws moved slowly, scanning the cliffs, occasionally calling out. "Clara," one of them shouted, laughing. "You out there, sweetheart? Boss said we should bring your ears back this time." She flinched, but only for a moment. Then she set the glasses down and reached for a knife. "Let's show them where I am." Ashki didn't argue. They let the first man ride through the snare. A sharp snap, a scream, and the horse bolted. Clara watched as the outlaw crumpled, cursing and clutching his leg. Thorn needles had buried deep. He rolled in the dust, trying to crawl back to his rifle. The second man dismounted, confused. "What the hell?" Ashki's arrow punched through his chest. He fell without a sound. The third man, Hank, spurred his horse around, trying to retreat. Clara sighted down the rifle. Her breath held. The shot cracked like thunder. Hank tumbled from a saddle, landing in a heap. They approached cautiously. Ashki moved first, bow ready. Clara kept the rifle up, pulse hammering in her ears. Hank was alive, barely. Blood seeped from a wound in his side, and one leg bent wrong. He stared up at Clara with bleary, hate-filled eyes. "You," he spat. "Me," she said, kneeling beside him. "Where's Jed?" "Go to hell." Ashki stepped closer. "Where?" Hank laughed, teeth red. "Jed's gonna skin you both. Hang your guts from a mesquite tree." Clara pressed the rifle barrel against his cheek. "Where?" He swallowed, then coughed blood. "South Ridge, near the old Spanish ruins. He's waiting for us to come back with proof. If we don't, he'll come." Clara stood. "Then we won't wait for him." She turned away. Ashki's arrow ended Hank's laughter. They buried the bodies under a rocky overhang and took what supplies they could: bullets, canteens, a saddlebag with stale biscuits and jerky. Ashki tossed a red scarf onto the path, letting it flutter in the wind. "He'll follow that," he said. Clara didn't ask how he knew. She believed him. They rode east, away from the bodies, taking a narrow trail that wound through stone arches and gullies. The horses' hooves echoed off the canyon walls like distant drums. Ashki guided them with purpose, scanning the terrain with the eyes of a man who saw threat in every shadow. By dusk, they reached a rise overlooking a cluster of broken walls, ancient ruins, sunken and weathered, tucked into a basin of sand and scrub. Clay bricks crumbled beneath a long-dead tree. A circle of stones suggested a fire pit. "Spanish mission?" Clara asked. "Or what was left of one?" They dismounted. Ashki led her through the ruins, showing her the angles, the blind spots, the places someone could hide or strike from. She listened carefully, soaking in every word. "We fight here?" she asked. "No," he said. "We draw him here." That night, they laid their last trap. Clara used the scarf to mark the trail. Ashki scattered boot tracks, mimicking Hank's limp. They left ashes, bullet casings, even a boot print in dried blood. Everything led to the mission. They rested behind a low wall. Clara cleaned the rifle again, fingers moving with new confidence. "You think he'll come?" she asked. "He'll come." She looked at him in the firelight. "You always this certain?" "No," he said. "But I've never been wrong." Clara smiled faintly. "What did you do before all this?" "I hunted men." "Bounty hunter?" Sometimes, he said. Other times, I just needed them gone. She nodded. You're good at it. So are you. She laughed. I've barely done anything. You crawled through death and didn't die. That's something. She turned toward the fire, the silence settling like a second skin. I didn't think I'd ever feel this again. What? Like I mattered. Ashki didn't speak for a long time. Then he said, to some men, a woman's only worth is how quiet she stays. But you're louder than all this stone, Clara Whitmore. Her breath caught. You think I'm ready? She whispered. No, he said. But you're willing. The words steadied her. The next morning came with hard light and long shadows. They heard Jed before they saw him. His voice carried like a bullet through the canyon. Clara, he shouted. You got my boys killed, didn't you, sweetheart? Ashki and Clara crouched behind the broken altar wall, weapons ready. Through a crack, she saw him. Jed Rourke, tall, lean, and still dressed like a gentleman outlaw. His black coat flapped in the wind. 2 men rode behind him. One was young, the other older, nervous. I figured you'd come looking for revenge, Jed called. But I'm here to offer mercy. Come out, and maybe I only cut off a finger. Clara's fingers curled tight on the rifle. Ashki glanced at her. She nodded. He stepped out first. Jed's eyes narrowed. Well, ain't you a sight? You the one who's been meddling, mister? No, Ashki said. I'm the one who's been watching. Jed's grin faded. Clara stepped out behind him. Jed's face went still. You, he said. Me, she answered. He laughed, cold, cruel. Didn't I shoot you once? Missed something vital, she said. You look different, he said, his voice softening. Stronger. You look smaller, she said. Jed drew. Ashki's arrow knocked the pistol from his hand before it cleared leather. Gunfire erupted. Clara dove behind a wall. One of Jed's men screamed and fell. The young one turned his horse and fled. Jed ran for cover, pulling a second pistol. Clara moved. She circled the ruins, flanking him. He fired twice, wild, desperate. She waited, counted, then stepped into view. He swung the pistol toward her. She shot him in the leg. Jed fell with a howl, pistol flying from his grip. She walked toward him, heart pounding. Still think I'm too proud? She asked. He snarled up at her. You were nothing but a quiet, pretty thing. I made you. She raised the rifle. I made me. He reached for his boot knife. She kicked it away and leveled the barrel at his heart. Ashki appeared behind her, watching. Jed wheezed. You gonna kill me, girl? Clara stared into his eyes, searching for the man she'd once thought she loved. But he wasn't there. Just greed, cruelty, cowardice. I don't have to, she said. She stepped back. Ashki pulled his knife and approached. Jed's eyes widened. Wait. Ashki silenced him with one stroke. Clara turned away, heart pounding, breath shaking. The wind rose again, rustling through the ruins. She didn't cry. Not for Jed. Not anymore. Ashki joined her, cleaning his blade. You did what you came to do, he said. I thought I'd feel more. You will. Later. They gathered their things. Burned what they didn't need. Clara found the obsidian shard again, still tucked in her coat pocket. She held it up to the sun. Ashki mounted the horse, offering his hand. Clara took it and climbed up behind him. They rode out of the ruins together, the canyon stretching wide and bright before them. The hunted had become the hunters, and Clara Whitmore was ready for whatever came next. They buried Jed Rourke under moonlight, not out of kindness, not out of guilt. It was something else, something colder and older. Clara couldn't name it, but it hummed through her blood as she watched Ashki cover the last mound of earth with a flat stone. She'd chosen the spot herself, beneath the broken arch of the old mission, where nothing ever grew. Ashki pressed his palm to the stone, murmured something in a tongue she didn't recognize. She didn't ask what it meant. It wasn't for her. The night was silent except for the wind. It moved through the ruins like a ghost unsure of its place, brushing against their skin, lifting the edge of Clara's coat. The fire they'd built nearby popped and hissed, but gave no warmth she could feel. She sat cross-legged beside the flames, arms wrapped around herself, eyes fixed on the dark. She thought she might cry. or scream, or collapse. But nothing came. Ashki returned and sat opposite her. His face, as always, was unreadable. But his silence tonight carried weight. "You didn't have to kill him," she said. He nodded once. "But I did. I was going to let him rot. Let time finish him. He would have come back. Or sent someone else." She stared into the flames. "He said he made me. Like I was clay. Like I was something he could shape." "You made yourself," Ashki said. "I don't know who I am now." He leaned forward, tossing a dry twig into the fire. "Then you're ready to become her." For a long time, neither of them spoke. The fire died to coals, and above them, the stars wheeled slow and eternal. Clara closed her eyes and listened to her heartbeat. It no longer galloped. It moved steady now, measured, ready. When she opened them again, Ashki was watching her. "You heading west?" she asked. He shook his head. "South. There's a man there who sells land that isn't his." Clara tilted her head. "You always chase men who think they're untouchable. Only when they start hurting women." A soft smile touched her lips. "I suppose I owe you more than a thank you." "You don't owe me anything. I might still follow you. You wouldn't like the road." "I didn't like the canyon either," she said. "But I walked out of it." Ashki looked at her a long moment, then nodded. At sunrise, they rode together through the broken lands beyond the ruins. They passed the remains of a wrecked stagecoach, bleached animal bones, the glitter of something metal half buried in the sand. The world was full of remnants, things left behind, forgotten. But Clara felt no fear. Not anymore. They stopped at a hill overlooking the plains. In the distance, far beyond the haze, smoke curled skyward from some settlement, too far to see, but close enough to reach by sundown. Clara dismounted, let her boots find the dust again. Her legs still ached, but she no longer limped. Her hands no longer trembled. She turned toward Ashki, and for the first time saw him not as a rescuer or guide, but as a mirror. "I think I'm ready," she said. "For what?" "For everything." He looked down the trail, then back at her. "You know where to go." She nodded. "There's a town past the basin. Sheriff there used to respect the law. I've got a story to tell." Ashki adjusted the strap of his rifle. "Then tell it loud." "Stay with me a while?" she asked. He hesitated. Then he said, "Until the story's told." They rode together again, not speaking much. The land stretched around them, wide and watching. Buzzards circle high, disinterested now. The trail curved toward a ravine where wildflowers grew out of stone, stubborn as breath. They made camp at dusk beside a creek, the first water Clara had seen in days that ran clear and fast. She knelt beside it, washed her face, and caught her reflection. Tanned, sharp-eyed, a scar beneath her jaw she hadn't noticed until now. She smiled at it. Ashki sat nearby, skinning a rabbit. She watched his hands move and realized how much she'd learned just from following his lead. Not just how to move or shoot or lay a trap, but how to wait, how to choose a moment. Later, as stars prickled the sky, he tossed her a piece of roasted meat. "Why me?" she asked between bites. He raised an eyebrow. "Why help me at all?" He took his time answering. "You screamed like someone who hadn't given up yet," he said. Clara nodded. That felt true. When sleep came, it came fast. She dreamed of canyon winds and stone eyes watching from cliffs. She dreamed of Jed's face melting into smoke. But she didn't wake screaming. Not this time. They reached the town just after noon. It was small, 2 saloons, 1 general store, a dusty main street framed by leaning buildings and rusted signs. The sheriff's office stood at the end of the street like a weary sentinel. Clara dismounted and handed the reins to a boy watching from a stable. Ashki said, "You want me to come?" She shook her head. "Not yet." She walked across the street, spurs clinking, dust curling around her boots. Heads turned. A few whispers followed. She opened the sheriff's door without knocking. The man inside looked up, startled. He was graying at the temples now, thicker in the gut, but his eyes were the same, sharp, suspicious. "Clara Whitmore," he said, standing. "By God, I thought you were." "Dead," she finished. "I was close." He moved around the desk. "What happened to you?" She dropped Jed's bloodied scarf on the floor. "I have a story," she said, "and you're going to help me tell it." An hour later, she stepped back outside. The sheriff had paled by the end of her tale. He promised telegrams, warrants, names. Ashki waited in the shade beside the saloon, sipping water from a tin cup. She approached him. "Town's shaking," she said. "Good. They'll come looking for who helped me. I won't be here." She hesitated. "I could come with you." He looked at her a long time. "You could." "But I won't," she finished. He nodded. She reached into her coat pocket and pressed something into his palm. The obsidian shard. "You gave me this without knowing," she said. "Now I'm giving it back." He closed his fingers around it. "What happens now?" he asked. Clara turned toward the street, the wind brushing her cheek. "I make noise," she said. "And if someone tries to silence you?" She smiled. "They'll learn what Jed did." Ashki stepped back, slung his rifle, and turned toward the edge of town. She watched him ride off, no goodbye, no promises. Just a shadow, returning to the land. Clara turned and walked into the saloon. The piano stopped. Men looked up. She went straight to the bar, dropped a coin, and ordered whiskey. When the barkeep poured, he asked, "What brings you to this dusty place, miss?" She lifted the glass. "Justice," she said, "and the story that comes after." She drank. And somewhere beyond the hills, beneath the moon's watching eye, the wind carried her name like a warning.